Hey guys, welcome to the very first episode of Between Realms, the psychological exploration of fandom culture and its effect on society, where we will deep dive into our favorite fantasy worlds and discuss how they shape our minds, behaviors, and how we see real life. I'm your host Carrington, and I'm really excited to have you guys here today because we are kicking things off with a pretty big topic. And that is how the fandoms that we're all obsessed with have impacted our identities and our psyches. Marvel, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, and even A Court of Thorns and Roses. These are just a few examples of the many fandoms that we will be covering on this podcast. And this episode is really just an overview of what inspired me to start this podcast in the first place. That's why I'm dropping 2 episodes today. So after this, go check out episode 2 to really get into it. Now, these worlds aren't just places to escape to, they mirror our own struggles, triumphs, and even our deepest fears. So let's jump into it. Alright, let's start with one of the most influential fandoms of the 21st century, Marvel Studios. And to be clear, besides just the storyline differences, there's a lot to differentiate between Marvel Cinematic Studios and Marvel Comics. Tony Stark as Iron Man kicking off the Avengers and the legacy of Marvel that was to come after this really was the final push, at least in my eyes, to nerd things becoming mainstream. Really making the switch from almost cool to actually this is really cool. We know Marvel isn't just about capes and superpowers though. It's about what makes us human. Our flaws, fears, desires, the pain that we deal with. Continuing with my forever favorite, genius and billionaire, Tony Stark. He's grappling with PTSD, survivor's guilt, a very deep-seated fear of failure. His entire journey through the MCU is about facing his inner demons and finding that redemption, not because anyone else, because he redeemed himself, he forgave himself. And because of that, he learned how to open up and love other people. Love you 5,000. Now, as viewers, we're able to connect our own emotions to what we're seeing on screen. So at some point or another, who hasn't felt like Tony in at least one scene in one of these movies? As viewers, we project our own feelings onto these characters and we think, oh, this character is going through this. This reminds me of that going on in my own life. This is helping me kind of work through these emotions and handle them in a safe place. We all have our own insecurities and our own battles with failure and our own fears that we're not good enough. Tony's vulnerability, his growth, his ability to be part of a team, despite his need for control, reminds us that even the strongest of us have moments of doubt. Now shifting over to the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Now I'm sure many of my viewers here either grew up with the series or read it really early on in life. And this magical world is full of real psychological struggles. Our main man Harry starts as an orphan. He's feeling rejected, alone, abandoned, constantly battling with his identity. And while he finds a lot of comfort in his magical powers, he learns that that's not where his strength comes from. It comes from the love and support that we find in our friendships. That's a huge psychological theme. The importance of social support, finding your chosen family. But everybody was able to connect to a different character within this series. Think about Hermione, her identity as an outsider, a bookworm, a nerd. It always makes me cry when I think about Emma Watson's interview in the Harry Potter reunion where she said that she grew up with her dad reading her the books. And Hermione would remind her of herself and how much she identified with Hermione and how much the character meant to her, and that she got to be Hermione, and I'm like, every time. And then there's Ron, who always feels second best to his brothers and Harry growing up in a really big family. Each of these characters grapples with their sense of identity and self-worth, just like all of us do. Harry Potter series teaches us that it's okay to be imperfect, and our power comes from the strength of our relationships and the love that we carry with us. And I really love that that's echoed throughout the fandom too. Okay, a new topic for me is Game of Thrones. And part of why I was really excited about this podcast is I can finally branch out and diversify and talk about everything because I finally finished watching Game of Thrones and I'm dying to talk about it with you guys. So this series took the world by storm, and for some reason it took me a million years to watch it, and I saw quite a few spoilers before I started watching it, but I watched it anyway and I fucking love it. But it makes us question every idea that we have about power and consequence and morality. But underneath all of the bloodshed and political intrigue, the series is a study of trauma and human psychology. Daenerys Targaryen starts as a very hopeful young woman with dreams of freedom, Talk about making a bad situation work in your favor, right? So she gains this power, this influence, and it corrupts her. Her descent into fear and vengeance is a very strong psychological commentary on what happens when we let our wounds define us. Don't know nothing, Jon Snow. When I found out they were married in real life, it was the best day ever. I loved them in the show so much. I was devastated when she died. And then after that, I checked the real world internet and I was like, oh my god, they're married in real life. Everything's okay. Jon Snow, the bastard. Constantly torn between the worlds of nobility and low birth, his entire identity rooted in rejection, and yet he rises to lead with honor. Jon Snow embodies the psychological concept of self-worth, in my opinion. How we define ourselves not by the roles society places upon us, but by our own choices. Now, another new topic for me is Star Wars, and a lot of you knew I was a huge Star Wars fan, but I never actually broke out into the content because there was nothing good happening. So, moving on. Star Wars, the ultimate battle between light and dark. And at its core, Star Wars is about internal conflict. Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side is one of the most compelling psychological arcs in pop culture. Starting as a hero, but his fear and anger and inability to process trauma just takes over. His story is a tragic reminder on how fear can corrupt us and how hard it is to resist the darkness when we don't address the wounds inside us. Anakin's fall speaks to something we all fear, that we're not good enough, or we're destined to repeat our worst mistakes. But again, it shows us the power of choice, because after all he's done, there's still a chance for redemption. So even when we fall, there's always room for growth and healing. Now I want to add one more incredible fantasy world to the mix today. Sweeping readers off their feet, captivating hearts everywhere, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. Now this series is part of a much larger multiverse that spreads across at least 3 book series. I'm currently reading Heir of Fire of the Throne of Glass series, and then after I finish Crescent City, both of those will get added into the mix. So I'm working on it. Same with Fourth Wing, so don't come for me. Anyway, if you haven't read ACOTAR yet, it's a dark, twisted fantasy that explores the themes of trauma, survival, and power dynamics. Everything from manipulation to abuse to healing to self-discovery. Now the protagonist's name is Farah, and she starts as a broken young woman who is physically and mentally abused. Despite her past and her circumstances, she manages to rise to a seat of power, and she manages to redefine strength. Farah's psychological journey is powerful because it's so relatable. She learns that power isn't just about physical strength or authority, it's about owning your voice, your trauma, your healing. In the beginning, she's defined by her pain, but through her relationships like Tamlin and Lucian and other characters that you meet later, she learns how to reclaim her sense of self. ACOTAR teaches us that healing is messy, but it's necessary for growth. It is a long psychological process of rediscovering who you are after what you've been through. And just wait till I get started on Nesta's story. The ACOTAR series, like Harry Potter and Marvel, asks us what it means to survive, to heal, to find strength in our darkest moments. Each of these characters, from Farah to Jon Snow to Anakin to Tony Stark, everybody is on a journey for self-discovery. They're not defined by their past trauma, but by their capacity to heal, love, grow, and choose their own path. So why do these fandoms resonate with us so deeply? Because at their core, they're about us, about how we fight our battles, about how we heal, how we love, how we become the people we want to be. These stories are mirrors reflecting our greatest strengths, weaknesses, and hopes. And by connecting with these characters, we're not just escaping reality, we're learning how to live it better. Alright, that's it for today's debut episode of Between Realms. Thank you so much for joining me today as I explored how these stories shaped who we are and why we're so drawn to them. If you love this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share it with your Marvel, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings fandom friends. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and let's keep this discussion going. Go be your own hero today, guys. Bye!